It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and with us here in the studio, back to the show, is Mary Beth Baker from our Sunday Visitor.
Hello.
OSV.
That's right, OSV. Our Sunday Visitor is the newspaper.
Yeah. So last time we had you on, you had all kinds of different book suggestions and talked about how to be a good reader, what kind of books to look for. And it was just so much fun talking. We said, can we do this more often? And you come on and talk about whatever books you want to share about.
Yeah.
And so today, being the second day of Advent,
right?
Is this an Advent book or is just a good book to read during Advent?
I like to think that it's both.
Okay.
Definitely more the latter, but it has a chapter called Advent.
Oh, okay. So a little bit of intentionality here.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. And this has become my annual Advent read since about 2008.
Really?
I was first introduced to it by a college professor at Christendom College. And it blew me away. And every year when I read it again, it blows me away more. It's that deep. So.
Are you getting different stuff out of it each time, or is it just reinforcing like, oh yeah, I remember that now?
Both but I find that's kind of one of the most amazing things about any spiritual reading that's truly worth its salt is that you're going to get something new out of it every time because it reaches you where you are in the current phase of life. So something that you just weren't ready for the last time you read it suddenly stands out to you in this whole new way, or something that touched you once before, you remember now, and you remember how it impacted you before and how it influenced you to change and to grow. And you see the results, you see the fruits of that. And so it just reinforces the message that was already there. So lots of layers, which I just love to all of these really great books. And I have, a stack of a few that I go back to. Another college professor actually around the same time used to tell us, you don't need to worry about having a library full of books.
Uh-huh.
You should have just a few books that you know really, really well and that you keep returning to. And while I love to have my library full of books, and I will continue to do so, I also have my special shelf. And those are the books with a capital T, capital B, that just have really impacted me and who I am as a person.
Well, maybe one time we'll have to get a list of all of those and a little rundown of those. Mm-hmm. But what do you have for us today?
So today, thinking about Advent reads, I had to pull out Carol Houselander's Read of God. That's R-E-E-D of God.
Uh-huh.
And it's a book about Mary. And I think a lot of times Catholic books about Mary can get a little bit difficult because Mary can be a little bit inaccessible or static. She's in the picture. We see her. We say, oh, that's beautiful. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. That doesn't really have anything to do with me, honestly, is another way we tend to react. Certainly it's a way I reacted for many years. And this book really, really changed that for me because Carol Houselander saw that and said, this isn't Mary, because Mary is real and she's living. And the only reason we don't know a whole lot about her is because Mary is also the model for each of us. And so if she looked too much like one thing for all of us, we wouldn't know how to imitate her. And yet the reality is that we are all called to imitate her because what Mary does is remain completely open and empty so that she can bear Christ and bring him into the world. And we are all called to do the same thing in our own unique way. And so this whole book just lays out what it means to be empty and ready as Mary was so that we can bear Christ, which is why it makes it the perfect book for Advent because it's all about that expectation and that hope. And yet there's also the reality of the life we know Mary lived and the sorrows we know Mary encountered and how her emptiness and her just willingness to accept whatever came prepared her for that as well and made her even more ready to give Christ at every moment because at every moment of Christ's ministry in life, she was behind him giving him with her yes. And so it just, it's so impactful. It's so good. Can't recommend it highly enough. And it's short. So even if you start it and only get through the first 3 or 4 chapters in Advent and finish the rest later, maybe in Lent, that's fine. But it's a quick read and it's just packs a punch.
So are they looking at scripture and what scripture says about Mary, or what is the foundation for breaking this down?
Yes, she looks at scripture. She really just looks at the life of Mary as we see it in scripture. So from the Annunciation, she dives into Mary's fiat and what that meant. She dives into the reality of Mary's virginity and what it means to live that, again, she calls it that emptiness, that virginal emptiness, which is not shriveled up or selfish or closed in on itself or prudish, but which is just complete readiness to receive God.
Yeah,
and then
different than like feeling empty.
Yes.
But being open and available.
And I was reading that chapter again, actually yesterday, as I was kind of preparing for my own Advent. And she talks about how this emptying is a continual process and one we have to go through cyclically all the time. And she compares it to a field that is replanted every year. But with fields, the first go around is the hardest. You got to clear out the rocks. You got to clear out the plants. You got to clear out the roots and all of the big things that are in there blocking what you're wanting to do with that field. And then after you've planted once, you harvest and then you clear the ground and prepare it again and till the soil and replant the seed, till it again, replant, let it lie fallow for a while. And so there's that same reality in our souls that we've got to just continually be going back and doing that tilling work to prepare the soil so that it can be ready for the harvest. And I think Advent is such a great time to start that process again. Our pastor, I go to the cathedral. So Father Jake was reminding us yesterday that Advent is kind of a yearly re-invitation. The Lord is like, all right, here we are again. Let's do it again. And it's a re-invitation to that true emptiness, which is getting rid of the clutter, getting rid of the stuff, getting rid of the noise. And that's kind of the constant reminder of all of the great spiritual books. I was just rereading the Screwtape Letters as well. And he talks about that as well, that the demons exist and operate in noise. And our God is a God of silence, and the demons can't stand silence. And silence is the ultimate emptiness, right? The right kind of emptiness, that we're removing anything that distracts, removing anything that impedes God's action in our lives, and just saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to receive so that I can give.
And I think those are things that we talk about a lot more in Lent than in Advent, but it's definitely a part of Advent that I think a lot of times we skip over because we're so focused on Christmas that we start celebrating Christmas instead of really entering into the Advent season, preparing for Christmas.
That's right. And then we can't even celebrate Christmas because we're tired and we're worn out and we've eaten too many sweets. And yes, I've been really, really thinking about that a lot, that I think that's one of the great things about finding a good book for Advent is that it kind of keeps us in that headspace of, yep, it's okay to go to your friend's Christmas party. It's okay to put up your Christmas tree. It's okay to get ready to celebrate, as long as you remember that you're getting ready to celebrate. Because first we've got to prepare the space for the Lord's coming. You know, we're preparing the manger, really. We're gathering around in Bethlehem and going, okay, he's coming. And also looking ahead to his second coming. Am I really ready? Am I ready for that too? Because that's a huge part of the invitation of Advent that I think we tend to pay some lip service to, but it's kind of the scary part of Advent. So we also back away from it a little. And yet, if we're really living this life, if we're really prepared, if we're really ready to let the Lord work in us, then the second coming becomes a promise, and one that we're excited about and that we really do look forward to.
And just, I think in general, having something intentional that we're doing in Advent, whether it be, some intentional prayer or reflections, there's all kinds of different daily things that are coming out for Advent, or, Magnificat or whatever, or reading a book like this, that's going to help us to put the focus in the right place and see Advent as a time of preparation, see Advent as a time of preparing ourselves and becoming better Catholics, better Christians.
Right.
So again, the book is The Reed of God
by Carol Houselander.
Okay. Anything else from the book that you'd like to highlight or point out?
I think just again, drilling down on that idea of emptiness, one of my favorite aspects of this book is that she says each of us is empty in a unique way, because the way in which we're empty actually sets the stage for our calling. And so that's the whole title of the book, Reed, R-E-E-D, of God. She's saying the reed is empty in a specific way because it's prepared for the piper to play. And there's going to be a melody that's piped through it. She says a bird's nest is empty in a specific way. It's going to be a home for a little bird. A chalice is empty in a specific way. It holds the wine that becomes the sacrifice. And so part of this period of Advent, and part of why I love this book for this time of Advent, is that there's a space of time in which the church says, let's step back, let's be quiet, let's enter into this life with God. And it gives us a chance to say, okay, Lord, what have you made me for? What's the particular emptiness that I'm supposed to have, the particular shape you've given me? Because that shows me how you want to live in me and how you want others to encounter you in me. And it's an exciting time to kind of prepare to meet the Lord fully as we are. And I think this book just really provides a lot of good, helpful reflection in that regard.
Yeah. Anything else that you would suggest? Any books that have recently come out? Maybe something for a gift for somebody as people are doing their Christmas shopping?
Goodness. The question is where to start. Well, while we're all thinking about Fulton Sheen, I would highly recommend his book on Mary, The World's First Love. Now, I have to admit, I have not read the whole thing. I just started it. But it's amazing. Can't recommend highly enough. So I'm on a very Marian kick this Advent, but I think Advent is Mary's season. We just spend time with her waiting for Jesus, and you can't go wrong if you're spending some time with Mom. So
that's what World's First Love is about, Mary?
It is.
Okay. I know Andrea is a big fan of it. I haven't particularly checked it out yet.
Definitely one of my favorite books of all time. I'm sure it's posted somewhere in our archives. My ravings about how amazing it is. If you have never developed like a real relationship with Mary, but always wondered why people do, read this book.
Okay.
Because then you'll understand like, oh, this is why people think she's so important. And this is why she can be important to me too. Yeah.
Very good.
So I need to finish this one. I'm excited. So, and then, have to put in a plug for an OSV book. I was going to recommend Dr. Lenny DiLorenzo's A God Who Questions. I know Kyle was saying he's been on the show to talk about it. But I think it's the perfect length. It's the perfect thing for Advent. And again, that encounter with Christ. It's 20 questions Jesus asks in scripture. And then he applies that to our lives and kind of says, all right, here's how I can be prepared to hear that question for myself and then answer it. So that one's actually on my reading list as well, because I was not the book's editor. So I get to read it as a real book.
We talked to him back in episode 792, so not too long ago. People can check that out.
Yes.
And I think it's a great idea of looking at those questions that Jesus asked and what did that mean? Like, why was he asking the question instead of just answering and giving them the answers? And, what does that mean for us today as well? So,
and I think it kind of fits with what I was saying about that idea of emptiness, that it's unique to each of us. When the Lord addresses a question to the crowds, he's also addressing it to each individual heart. And he knows what's in our heart as an individual person. And to face those questions head on as an individual, I think is a very important part of the spiritual life. And what better time than Advent when maybe we've added a little extra silence into our lives so we can listen.
All right. So quick review. The Reed of God, The World's First
Love by Archbishop Fulton Sheen.
And A God Who Questions.
Yes.
Our suggestions for the month. All right, I'll have links for those in the show notes when that gets posted. Thank you so much, Mary Beth Baker, for joining us and for sharing that. I'd never heard of that before, The Reed of God. So
can't recommend highly enough.
I guess if you're reading it every year, that's great.